my screen here. And there we go. All right, you guys should see that we are recording, so you guys are not missing anything. It's going to go into a video. So, all right, so like I said, we have our website here. And if you guys didn't have that, you can go ahead and bookmark it now. I'll put it there for you in the little chat link. Okay. Also, there was tutorials for the Mac and also Windows. Okay, and then Office for students. If you haven't done that already, you can either do it two ways: sign into it, or using your Grantham email, or go to this link, put your email address in it for school, and download it. I'll give this link to you guys too. It's important. Okay, so just so you know, like Microsoft actually sponsors students. You know, especially here in school, they give you a free Office 365 account. And basically, when you're in Office 365, it's a web browser, right, or a web portal you go into, and then you have to actually download the desktop version so you can use it. Okay. If you need steps on how to do that, let me know. We can go through that later on. And the good thing about having Office 365 is that you always get the latest updated version of Office. Okay. And whenever you download the desktop version, the download for the desktop actually updates too. So that's important, especially when you're working with Microsoft products, because basically it's important to keep it updated, right? So. All right, let me just get rid of some of the stuff I was showing last night. Tutoring for math. There you go. All right, who's excited? You guys excited? All right, let me ask a question. Has anybody else ever seen Excel before today? You guys have used Excel before? Perfect. All right. So, do you guys know how Excel works? No, that sounds like a silly question, right? Okay. Let me tell you how Excel works, so that way when we start building our knowledge here, and how we can do things, that'll really help us. So, can anybody tell me the cell address for this particular case right here, where I'm at now? I know some of you are probably looking around to figure out what that means, right? Well, every cell in here, that's how a cell works, right? So each cell has an address name, okay? And the address name was always in the top left-hand corner up here underneath the name box. Always. So you don't have to worry about counting the rows and the columns, right? The cell address, the way you read it, is D and then whatever row it is. So that's the cell address. The reason why that's important is because whenever we're doing any kind of formulas or calculations, we have to tell Excel, you know, how to calculate, what to do, and where to point to, right? Before I go any further, I'm actually going to bring up a calculator here, because this is how Excel is built. Okay, so somebody give me a math problem real quick, something simple like addition problem. Type it in the chat box. This a simple math problem. You know, don't do any. Okay, 4 plus 5. Let's do 4 plus 5. Ready? 4 plus 5. And then what do we do next? How do we get the answer? We do 4 plus 5. And then what do we have to do to get the answer? Good. This is how Excel works too. You push equals to get the answer, right? Well, let me do that in Excel real quick so you can kind of see how Excel works. You ready? Each one of these cells, you can do anything you want to it. I could put a label in there. I could put a name in there, like a label. Or I can do math problems in it. I can turn Excel, the cells, into a calculator. The first thing you have to do, we can do exactly like we did into the calculator. 4 plus 5. And what do we do next to get the answer? In the calculator, we pushed equal, right? Right? Well, let's see here what happens first if we do that. So we put equals here, and we'll think that it would work, right? So we push enter. What happened? What do you think happened? Excel doesn't know what to do with it, right? So what happens if we reverse this process? We put the equal sign first, What do you think would happen now? You think it would work? Let's see. Ah, okay. So what happened here is within Excel, you can see Excel here. I'll bring up the calculator here so we can kind of see what happened. On the calculator side, we actually put the equal sign first, the operation, what you want it to do. You know, you want it to go in and total it out, right? Well, in Excel, if you want to turn one of those cells into a calculator, you have to put the equal sign first. Okay? So essentially, each one of these little cells is like a calculator. Right? That's just the beginning of Excel. So just like we have in our calculator over here, we have different functions in here, meaning that we can do a square root if you want to, or a square, square root. We can do different things like log, cosine, tangent, right? We can also do that in Excel too. And that's easily done by our little formulas area over here, our functions. So all Excel is a collaboration of different cells. We can reference cells. We can turn the cell into a calculator. Okay. And we had a question in there. Does Excel let Excel know what you're doing? Okay, yeah. Yeah, basically what it does is it tells, basically you're assigning a value to that cell. Okay. So basically when you put equals, you're telling Excel, say, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to turn this cell into a calculator and put out this value. Okay, that's what it's doing for that particular thing. Now, of course, on these cells, I can actually put words in there if I want to, right? Like I did a while ago with the text value. I can say up here, this is the total, right? And then below it is the total, right? I can do this. This is more like the human side. We want to kind of put some relationship to it. And then this is the total. Now you did notice a difference here, right? This is not 9, not just 9 here, right? If I just put 9 here, it'll be 9 there, right? Up here is your little formula box, okay? It's the same thing as typing here versus in here, okay? And when you type in here, it's the same thing. The difference is what's inside the cell, okay? So when I click on these different ones, and I'll show you, if I just type 9 here and there, now they both look the same, right? When I'm not clicking on it at all. They both look the same. But when I actually click on it, you can see the actual computation in there, right? One of them is like a calculator. The other one is just a value. Now, with our data we're working with in class, we're just going to have just the values in here, right? These numbers. But we have to do some calculations to these numbers. We have to use them in a calculation. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit further into it, but you know, I just want to show you the basics of Excel so far. Okay, so everybody kind of understand a little bit, right? How to know what a cell address is so far, know how to turn Excel into a calculator, know how to actually type in values on there. Those are all really important, okay? All right, of course there's more details of this thing. So back on the Home tab, let's talk about that for a minute. Your Home tab is basically where you're going to be manipulating the look and feel of your text. Okay, the numbers, the way it looks, formatting, things like that. The Home tab will do all that for you. Okay, so the only thing you look for is right here, these fields right here, this area. Okay, you want to change the color, you want to make it centered, you want to be able to change the value or the type of number it is or general, that type of information right here. All of it's right there. This will become important later on whenever you're trying to do percentage, the values, place values, and things like that later on for your values. But for now, just know that Excel, to use it, is based on referencing the different cells. You can do computations. You can also use the cells to put labels on it, the values that we refer to in a human aspect, right? To refer to it or relate to it. You can also use it for calculations, right? So now let's do something a little bit more advanced here, okay? Let me put some information here. I'm going to go ahead and get my, well, I was going to get it. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here, the Excel demo, real quick. How's everybody doing so far? You guys would remember this later on. Looks similar to our projects, but just sit back and relax for a minute, okay? Let me show you a couple things here, what we can do for Excel real quick. Now, typically you're going to get a data set or something to work with, okay? So it's important to understand what the elements are and how Excel looks at it and how you can kind of pick it out, because you're working with data here, and Excel is a tool to help you. But it only works good if you know what the elements are, okay? So in a typical data, you're going to have some sort of labeling or heading or something that relates to like a field, okay? And what I mean by field, I mean like, school is a field, right? So like imagine filling out a form, okay? Normally you would have like maybe your name, your phone number, address maybe, things like that, right? Those are all called labels or headings, right? Or fields inside of a database, okay? The entries below it actually relate to that particular field. For example, we have school type, and we have school right here, business major. So all this schools here below it relate to that, okay? Relate to a school, I meant. And then the school type, for example, you have private and public. So those are the different types of schools. The cost, here's all the values that are associated to cost. Okay, and then these are all, just, in statistics, they're called variables. Okay, so like really we have, how many names we have now? Variable, labels, headings, fields, right? So they're all essentially the same thing, but they mean different things, okay? A variable, when we looked at grade school, when we had algebra, or, a variable A, B, C, like that, right? Well, these are variables in statistics, meaning that points of measurement, okay? So don't get too caught up into the whole lingo there, but you'll start talking about in class, you'll talk about element, right? Variable type, right? Things like that. So you would have time to read that this weekend. And we're not trying to get into it right now, but the reason why it's important is because Excel does the same thing, okay? Up top here, these are always the labels. You can move them around anywhere you want to, right? But whenever you create association to it in Excel, that's what's important, okay? So it's assumed that you're always going to have labels, and then below those labels are the values that are related to those labels. Okay, so why is this important? Well, let's see. When we're doing some math problems here, way before we're getting into a while ago, right? We're doing some math, basic math, right? We have to be able to know first logically what we need to do. So if I told you to go here and add up all the costs for all the schools, okay? If I highlight all this right here, Excel does it for you. Look on the bottom right here, the bottom right. You see it? Excel does it for you already, just by highlighting it. Automatically, it's going to count. It's going to tell me it's 40, and there's 7 million in there, right? The average is 176,656. You guys see that on the bottom? Whenever you highlight information in Excel, if you have numbers, it's going to do that for you. Okay. Now, if I wanted to actually create something over here, okay, I can show you a couple ways to do this, right? If I wanted to actually put in this little box here, say I wanted to create like a little box over here, and I want to be able to just get the total cost here, I can do, let's just put it here, labeling it total cost, just for example, right? And I'm going to show you 2 ways you can do it, even though there's a lot more, there's different ways you can do it. But I'm going to show you 2 ways, okay? And you tell me which way you like. Now, when I used to first use Excel, this is probably 20 years ago, I actually used to do this. So you put equals, because remember we're turning into a calculator, right? And I want you to kind of keep an eye up right here on the very top, okay? I'm going to show you two approaches. So the first one, we turn it into a calculator. We're going to put equals first, right? Always. And guess what? You don't have to really type in each of the cell references here. What you do is you click right here, equals this, and just like we did inside of the calculator, you put plus sign in between, right? Now this is the long way, so go ahead and watch me do this. It's pretty tedious. Now you're probably asking me a question now, right? What is the C2? What's the C3? What's the C4? What Excel's doing? It said, look inside this cell, and I want you to add, plus sign there. Add whatever's in cell 2, what is in C3, what is in C4, what is in C5. Add those together. So it can be anything in those cells, and it's going to do whatever the math function I'm doing here. You guys see that? So essentially what I'm doing is teaching you guys how to read Excel. That way you can kind of build out yourself too as you go through. Now, of course, this is the long way, like I said. Okay, there's a lot of ways easier, but this one here, this approach, could lead to inaccuracy. Okay, and the reason why I show students this is because I want to point out that Excel, number one, is invaluable if you use it the correct way, but also there's many ways to do things, and it seems like a long way to go, doesn't it? And you also notice too that there's different colors for each one of these, so you can kind of pick out which one you're doing, and it keeps track of for you right there. Okay, so I have all of them in there. Now this would actually add everything together for me. You see that? 7,000,066. You guys see that, right? That's a long way. Okay, hopefully I'm not losing you guys, am I? Let me show you some quick ways to do this. Okay, this is the one you guys should always go to. There's functions in Excel. Okay, all functions is a formula, a predefined formula. Okay, right now when you're looking at up here on my cell, that's a formula I have for my cell. I want it to add total cost. Well, it has to add all that stuff together, right? That's pretty long. Would you guys agree? All right, so let's show you something that's really simple here. Equals. And then I want you to, Excel, I want you to use the sum function, okay? Notice when I type in sum right there, it comes up with all these different options, right? Whenever you click on a function, if you just double click on it, you can actually go into the function, and then there's a help tool for that. So whenever you type in a function, it's just like you're doing for your calculator here. Whenever you do that, what you do is you actually put the information first, and then you push the function, right? Well, Excel does it this way, where you type the function you want first. If you're not for sure which function you need, let me show you what you do. You can actually hover over these functions, and it kind of gives you a description of what it does. So if you click on it like this, it'll give you an identification what it does. Okay. So number one, when you type equals, you'd start typing in stuff in here, and you're only going to be using a handful of functions anyways in this class. So don't get too carried away. It's not going to be that complicated. You just got to know how to actually turn it on. So the first thing you do is type in equals, start typing in here, okay, and it'll pop up here for you. It'll tell you if it has available for you. So the one we're doing here is equals sum. Now what the sum does is it basically talks about adding in a plus sign in between whatever values you highlight, okay? So what I mean by that is it's a range, okay? And what a range is a selection of more than two or more cells. Now if you actually, okay, before I go there, it's important to talk about these little brackets here. Okay, you see these two brackets here? Functions have to have brackets around always. Okay, because what you're doing is you're telling the function to only look inside these two brackets. Okay, perfect. And it's important to only look at basically you're telling the function, I want you to do whatever you do to this selection. Every function has to have the two brackets there. You guys see that? That's important. All right, so the good thing is you don't have to do like we did a while ago. It's a pain, right? All you have to do is select, once you're inside this brackets here, is just select the text that you want it to go ahead and summarize for you. And how to read this, it says from C2 to C41, I want you to add a plus sign in between each one of those, so I don't have to, because I'm lazy, right? I don't want to do that. So then when you're done, you push enter, and you go back up here, and it gives you the same results. Okay, so which approach would you like to do better? The first one or the second one? All right, so you guys see how that works, right? The basic approach to doing functions. Okay, now we're going to do a couple more here because I know that you guys are very excited about this. Let's change this around here. Copy and paste. You can paste them in here. I'm going to do the average, and then I'm going to do the mean. Right, the mean is average. Just so you guys know, take your notes there. Mean equals average. Mean is average in Excel, okay? Take that note down. Mean is average. When you see mean, it means the average. Median, mode. And basically we're just describing the stuff here for us, okay? We're just describing the data for the cost, okay? And this is all, what is this? It's cost up top here, right? All right, so for average, do you think there's a function for this average thing, right? Okay, well you just do equals average. Okay, you notice down here I'm typing. You just click on it, and it comes up with a little bracket for me already. So all I have to do is highlight that data all the way down until I'm ready. Go back into my box up here, close the bracket out, and then put enter. Okay, so now I have my average. Now, how do we do median? Equals median, and you guys will see this inside of your how-to videos in a minute. I'll show you where to go, and you'll get this video too. Median, same thing. And you guys will learn about this stuff too, as far as what mean, median, and mode is. Basically, what they are is describing the data, the central tendency of the data, and you guys will get into that later on. There's no need to talk about that now. You'll learn that like in week 2, okay? So don't get too carried away. Just remember how to do it. It's really, there's actually an easier way to do this, believe it or not. And I won't show you that right away, but okay. So that's how you do it. So that's pretty simple so far, right? Now, you thought you had to do everything by hand here, didn't you? So that would be a pain, wouldn't it? Now, would you rather do this by hand? Because you could on your paper, right? Right? I know students that do. That's why I ask. Because a lot of students do not know how to do this. So it's important to learn how to use Excel to do this. Okay? All right, so that's how you basically summarize your cost right there. You have mean, median, mode, and average. You did it already, right? Total cost is this between the schools, but you didn't have to do that, right? So, but yeah, okay. So right now you guys will learn quite a good foundation for Excel already. So you know how to reference stuff. You know how to create using a formula or a function. You know how to do that. You know how to select a range, right, like we did. You know how to type information into Excel. You know what the reference value is, where it's located. You also know how to, change the font and coloring of that stuff for the font here and coloring options. It's all in the Home tab. If you ever wanted to do the function list, you can actually go to the formula side and see all the lists down here. There's some specifically for statistics too. Oh, and better yet, I don't know for sure if you guys have seen this yet. Kind of hit it a little bit. So if I wanted to do total cost here, I can just click this button right here, and I'll highlight the actual text I wanted. So it's a little button right there, and it does the same thing for me. So okay, so that's just the basics of Excel. Now let's talk about a couple things here. You guys need to know how to graph and all that, right? And how to summarize your information, right? So let me turn you on to this thing called a pivot table. And the reason why I show pivot table is because, yeah, we could do counts and all that stuff, but let me just show you. Let me show you the long way first and then the easy way, right? All right. I'll show you the long way, and then we'll show you the easy way. All right, so if I needed to find out the count of the school types. Yeah, cool. All right, so what I'm doing now is I want to figure out how much I have for each school type, right? Because that's one of your topics you have to learn how to do. School type. And I want to know, basically what the private and public schools counts are, right? And I'm just putting in here the counts, okay? And this is a realistic assignment here. So I wanted, basically what I did was I copied the type of data I have over here. I just right-click copied or Control-C. If you hover over here, you'll see the shortcut keys, okay? That's why you probably not see me right-clicking in there. But just know every one of these things, if you hover over stuff here, you'll be able to see the shortcut keys. The control button and whatever, right? This is for Microsoft, or excuse me, for Windows users, but for Mac, I don't know. But basically, that's how you do it. So the reason why that's important is I wanted to get the type of data here, and I wanted to summarize those counts. Okay, and the reason why you do this anyways is so you can do the pie charts, okay? In order to do a graph, you have to be able to summarize the data first, or figure out how you want to display that data first. Don't just go in there and create a pie chart. It's not gonna, it won't work, right? You could if you actually created a pivot table and do that, but I'll show you that in a minute. So there's a function in here called COUNTIF, right? So if I type in here or here, it doesn't matter. I can type in count. You guys can, I'll give you this formula too so you'll have it, the function. COUNTIF, okay? So COUNTIF, and then what you're going to do is you select the range that you want. And the range, remember I told you the range is whatever data you're looking at, okay? So it could be numbers or letters. In this case, we're doing a COUNTIF, so it's going to be letters, right? Or numbers, but here's letters. I'm going to go ahead and select the whole range down here, the whole data that I'm looking at, okay? Because my goal, again, is to summarize the type of schools I have, okay? And I want to know, how many they are, right, of each. And in this case here, what the comma means is an argument, okay? I want it basically, when I'm in between that range, I want to put a new argument in there. I'm going to give it a criteria, as if I'm actually counting myself, okay? I could go through there manually and count private, all the privates, right? I can go there and count manually, right? But here I'm telling Excel to do it for me. So I wanted it to stop there. I wanted to look from B2 to B41. Then I wanted it to count for all the private, the content here, private, right? And then I'm going to close it out, okay? So I'll always close out my functions. So COUNTIF, count between B2 and B41. Look for the criteria of private. Push enter, and it says 27. Now imagine doing that manually, right? Probably inaccurate. You may get it a little bit off, right? So it's important to do that. So the next one, we do the same thing. Equals COUNTIF, right? You just go in here, start typing count, and you'll see it in here. And if you ever want a description in there, it tells you right there what it does, okay? And then you highlight your data you want to count. Okay, and then you put the comma, and it tells you right there what to do. What's your criteria? Okay, and it's pretty helpful right of Excel, because I would never memorize this stuff. And then from there, close it out and put enter. All right, so you guys see that. Now we can do what? A pie chart. So of our data, right? So how do we do that? Well, remember in the beginning I told you about how Excel needs to have labels, it needs to have heading, or it needs to have some sort of variable to work with, right? And then also it has to have data that relates to it. Well, this is the same way that it works with when you're doing the actual graphs, okay? So if I wanted to create a pie chart of this, I would highlight this information here and I go to insert. And you'll never believe how easy this is. Let me show you your favorite tool here now. You can actually go insert and then click on recommended graphs if you want to. And it already tells you what you can do with it. You see that? And from there you can push OK, which one the one you found. You can also go to all charts and see more. There's a lot of them in there. But okay, no problem. Go back. So you see what we did here, right? I'm gonna go ahead and give you that formula so you guys can kind of see how it's built in there. All right, that's the count if. Okay. So to actually graph this, you would actually highlight this data first. Okay. Now the reason why I know this is qualifying data is that it has a label for it, and also this data relates to that. Counts. This data relates to that. So I have to highlight all this data here. Then go to Insert. Your Home tab, Insert tab, and Formula tabs are the main ones you're going to be doing in here with Excel. Insert, we go to do graphs. Okay. So if you click on graphs, recommended graphs, the little widget pops up for you. Here we wanted to do a pie chart, but there's a lot of different options in here. Okay. The recommended one, you just click on it and then go to push OK. And when you do that, it actually pops up for you. Now you can move it around, you can interact with it, you can make it smaller, bigger, things like that. Okay. Now you're probably wondering, how am I going to submit this assignment, or how would I do that, right? How would I work with that? You know, and what you can do is you can actually use Excel to submit your work in. Let me tell you what another option in Excel is good for, and then I'll go back and talk about the actual graphing. Insert text box. This is going to be your friend too. Text box, you can actually go down and click anywhere you want, and then now you can imagine here, you can put your question for your assignment in here, and then put your response there. You'll have your graph here and everything that's already all in the assignment. Okay, so you can submit the Excel sheet for your assignment, and use this particular text box here as your Word document almost, right? It's like a little object you can write in. You can type in here, just like this. Okay, you guys see that? And a lot of you guys may be taking accounting in the future. I don't know, but you can use Excel too. This is why Excel is good to use. You can definitely use it for that stuff like that. All right, so here, let me show you about the graph, how it works. I'm going to make it bigger a little bit so you can see. Okay, move this out of the way. Come on. There we go. All right, so I want you to pay attention up here on the very top. Now you notice that we don't have any kind of graphing or any way to actually manage the graph here, right? So the only way it works, if you click on the graph itself, then it comes up. You see the chart tools up here? It only comes on when you click on the graph. So if you're wondering how can I, fix this graph, how can I work with it? First you have to click on the graph, and then you can go through the design. And this is my favorite part, by the way, of the whole graphing experience. From here you go, what I recommend doing is go to quick layouts, and then from here you can actually choose whatever type of layout you want by hovering over this, and it gives you like a preview on your graph. You see it changing? Okay. And then from here what you can do is go in here and change the way it looks. Okay, you can change it to whatever you need. That's essentially how you fix your graphs there. This goes up too. Okay. So do you have any questions on that so far? Also, let me show you a cool little tool here from Insert. Let's see. You can actually insert shapes if you like to. Imagine you're working with data. You want to be able to use a little shape if you want. You can do that. That's pretty cool, right? Especially if you're trying to point out things, right? You can insert shapes. You can insert call out sheet, call outs. Where's that at? If you want to call out a piece of data or something or talk about, you can even insert like a little text box in here too. Okay. So a lot of things you can do. Okay, so the fun part, right? So the big thing is whenever you create any kind of graph, you gotta summarize. You have to figure out how do you summarize that data, right? How you want to display it. That's what you need to start thinking about. And how would you do it if you're looking at the problem, right? First, we'd need to know the counts. We would need to know, things like that. How can Excel be used? There's got to be a function for it already, right? If not, how would I do it manually? Those are the kind of questions you ask yourself. You don't necessarily need to know the formula all the time. You can use Excel, the functions, and from there, if you didn't know what the function does, what can you do? And there's help functions in here. So, like for example, if I didn't know what this did, I can actually click on here, and Excel has a tutorial right there on it how to do it. So the things I'll show you tonight or today, you can actually go back on the website on your own time too and look on Excel. On the Microsoft side, it'll tell you step by step how to do it by clicking on the little link here. And you can invoke that by start typing in here, and there's a link for it. And that's for every function. Okay. Now, let's see here. What else? Usually the trouble with this, there's a couple of them with dot plotting and all that stuff. What kind of questions do you guys have? I know I was going to cover some more things here. I don't want to take too much more every time today. What kind of questions do you guys have? Dot plotting. Of course you would. All right, so what's the scenario? What are we dot plotting? All right, let's see. Here's our dot plot how-to guide. That's pretty neat. I already have it there. That's like a little graphic I put together, where we put on there's a website already on that. Let's see. This is what you're supposed to be doing right here. And basically, you're summarizing information, you're doing counts for it, right? And then doing the graphing, right? So we need to get to this point. You guys agree? So how would we summarize our data to get to here, to graph it? Right? So if I can represent this in Excel. We already know what to do, right? Kind of. How would I do that? Right? So you need almost like a frequency count for each one, right? And similarly, you have like almost like a histogram, not a histogram, but what is it? Yeah, you can do that through similar to a histogram, but this is more a bar graph with counts. But what's our scenario? Give me a scenario we're working with here to be able to do it. Okay. Count if, okay, we can do count if. But what are we counting? What are we doing the dot plot on? What was one of the questions you guys saw that for our data set here? Was it not this? It was actually from the class, right? Let me go back in there and see something similar. Let me see.